What happens when the monarchy turns on its own? And this time, it's not just gossip. No tabloid headlines. No bitter anonymous sources. No Netflix edits. Just cold, hard parliamentary language, read aloud in a chamber lined with velvet seats, crimson carpets, and centuries of tradition. Emotion, written not by paparazzi or press agents, but by peers of the realm. And its target? Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. Spare no more. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Now ask yourself, what does it mean when the House of Lords, one of the oldest institutions in the British political system, moves against a man born into royalty? What would it take to trigger that kind of formal condemnation? Betrayal? Scandal? Or something much, much deeper? Because this isn't about tabloid tiffs or squabbles over protocol. This is about the crown fighting back, using law, influence, and symbolism to reclaim control over a royal story that's spun wildly out of their reach. And the worst part? Harry never saw it coming. Let's rewind. It started with a whisper, a joke, even. A throwaway line uttered in a private Westminster dining room over glasses of Bordeaux and roast lamb. One peer chuckled and said, "Perhaps it's time we stop calling him a duke." The table went quiet, and within 48 hours, someone had written a motion. How did it escalate so fast? Why now? And who's really behind the attempt to strip Harry of his titles? Let's break this wide open. Because behind the gilded walls of Parliament and the polished statements from the palace lies a ticking time bomb, and its fuse has already been lit. Harry's days as a titled royal might be numbered, and he knows it. Now here's the twist you didn't see coming. This wasn't orchestrated by a tabloid campaign. It didn't come from Buckingham Palace, and it wasn't driven solely by angry Brits tired of Netflix drama and California sun. No, this started within the walls of government. A House of Lords member, someone Harry once shook hands with, someone who publicly supported his Invictus Games and praised his military service, filed the motion. Not out of vengeance, he claims, but out of duty. That's the word they keep using. Duty to the crown. But doesn't duty work both ways? Doesn't the crown owe something to the boy who walked behind his mother's coffin? Or has Harry burned the last bridge back to royal redemption? That's the question tearing Britain apart. And depending on where you stand, it's either justice or betrayal. Let's look at why this moment matters right now. Because this isn't some symbolic slap on the wrist. It's not just public opinion shifting. This is formal, legal, historic, and it comes at a time when the monarchy is already teetering. King Charles's popularity waning, William picking up the slack, and Meghan and Harry carving out a narrative empire in Hollywood that's making the old guard look, well, old. But perhaps more significantly, this comes as the Commonwealth begins to fracture. Australia is openly questioning its ties to the monarchy. Jamaica is preparing to cut the cord. South Africa's youth no longer sees royalty as relevant. And in the middle of all this turbulence stands Harry. A royal without a kingdom, a prince without a purpose, and now, possibly a man without a title. So why strip him now? Why launch a formal motion now? Years after Megxit, years after the Oprah interview, years after Spare. Because, according to insiders, it's not about what Harry did in 2020. It's about what he's planning in 2026. A source close to Westminster says the final straw wasn't a book or a documentary. It was an email. A single sentence in a leaked correspondence between a production team and an Australian cultural official regarding Harry and Meghan's upcoming visit for the promotion of Close Personal Friends, their controversial Hollywood project. In that email, Meghan was referred to as HRH, the Duchess of Sussex, a title she legally no longer holds in an official capacity, not for engagements, not for commercial use, and that sent chills down the spines of more than one lord. Because it wasn't just a mistake. To them, it was a shot across the bow, a reminder that Harry and Meghan, despite everything, were still leveraging royal prestige for personal brand value. And that, in their eyes, is unforgivable. But here's where it gets messy. Because once the motion was drafted, it leaked. And the moment the public found out, the entire dynamic changed. Supporters of Harry accused Parliament of bullying, of silencing dissent, of punishing a man for telling the truth. Traditionalists argued the opposite, that a title carries responsibility, and Harry forfeited that responsibility the moment he signed a Netflix deal and aired royal grievances to Oprah in primetime. And the palace? Radio silence. Not a word from Charles. Not a murmur from William. Just that eerie, tactical quiet that only the firm can pull off. A silence that says more than any statement ever could. Is it support? Is it condemnation? Or is it strategy? You decide. Because here's where things get downright chilling. The vote itself hasn't even happened yet. This is all prelude. What you're about to witness in this exposé is the unfolding of a political campaign, a coordinated, strategic attempt to erase the last remnants of Harry's royal identity from the British system. Not his family, not his bloodline, but his status, his public persona, his symbolism. Because in the eyes of the lords pushing this through, Harry is no longer a prince. He's a liability. But wait, this isn't just about the UK. This has ripple effects. How will Australia refer to Harry if his titles are stripped? What happens to their security protocols? What about the US visa tied to his royal status? What about the charities that bear the Sussex name? And what about Meghan? Does she remain a duchess if her husband becomes Mr. Harry Windsor? Think about the power dynamic shift. Think about the headlines. Think about the business implications. Because this isn't just about identity. It's about empire. And we haven't even scratched the surface yet. In the chapters ahead, we're diving deep into the private dinner that sparked this political wildfire, the peer leading the charge, and his shocking personal connection to Diana, the staffer who leaked the call between Harry and Charles, and the vote that could change royal history forever. But before we get there, let me leave you with this. Imagine waking up to a phone call. Not from your father, not from your brother, but from a legal advisor telling you Parliament is moving to remove the only thing tethering you to your family legacy. Your name, your title, your identity. That's what happened to Prince Harry. And the worst part? He didn't see it coming. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if one glass of wine, one careless comment, and one overheard whisper could change the future of a prince? Because that's exactly how this story begins. Not in the throne room, not in a courtroom, not even in the House of Lords itself, but in a private, oak-paneled dining room in Westminster. Off the record, off the radar. A room where secrets flow freer than the wine, and where reputations have been both made and destroyed with a single toast. It was meant to be a casual dinner, a routine gathering of political allies and well-connected insiders. Nothing extraordinary until it was. The lighting? Dim. The mood? Relaxed. The conversations? Loose, after the third bottle of claret. But then, like a match to dry tinder, someone raised his name. Harry. At first, it was just a light jab. One older peer, rumored to be on his third scotch, grumbled about Harry's latest appearance on a US podcast. He's made a career of dragging us all through the Californian mud, he sneered, twirling the last inch of liquor in his glass. At this point, should we even be calling him a duke? Laughter. A few chuckles. One or two raised eyebrows. A younger lord, recently appointed, leaned in, intrigued. Well, he is still officially the Duke of Sussex, isn't he? A moment of silence passed like a shadow over the table. And then, from the corner, almost too casual to be intentional, came the line that changed everything. Maybe it's time we changed that. The table froze. It wasn't a joke anymore. And the man who said it wasn't laughing. Let's pause right there. Let me ask you something directly. If you were in that room, would you have laughed, or would you have picked up your phone? Because someone did. And within hours, the idea that had once been confined to whispered grumbles among traditionalists had transformed into a formal political idea, stripping Prince Harry of his royal titles. And not just any titles, his hereditary, state-recognized, internationally referred to titles. Duke of Sussex, Earl of Dumbarton, Baron Kilkeel. Titles conferred by the late Queen. Titles linked to legal identity and diplomatic protocols. Titles he still signs with and brands with. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because before this became a national controversy, it was something far more dangerous. A political opportunity. Now, here's where it gets fascinating. One of the people at that dinner, the youngest in the room, fresh from an Oxford debate circuit, with ambitions bigger than his title, didn't see this as gossip. He saw strategy, a way to stake a claim as the new face of a cleaner, stricter monarchy, A way to appeal to the growing Republican sentiment brewing in corners of Britain tired of Hollywood royals and Netflix contracts. A way to make a name. So he did what ambitious politicians do when opportunity knocks. He took notes. He called in a favor from a parliamentary clerk. And within days, the proposal was in the works. You see, it wasn't just about Harry's behavior anymore. It became about precedent. Because what if a future royal also wanted out? What if they left the country, cut off the crown, launched a media empire, and still used their titles like royal currency? To some, Harry wasn't just a family problem. He was a constitutional liability. Let that sink in. Now imagine Harry, sitting thousands of miles away in Montecito, totally unaware that back in London, people in tailored suits and ancient chambers were scheming to erase his formal identity. Not out of malice, but out of policy. Let's get back to that dinner. By the time dessert had been served, a salted caramel tart paired with vintage port, the tone of the room had shifted completely. What began as mockery was now morphing into moral outrage. The words flying across the table had changed. He's mocked his father, the king, no less. He's exploited his military background for personal gain. He used Diana's memory as a shield. He's commodified the crown. He is no longer acting in the spirit of his title. That phrase, acting in the spirit of his title, would reappear days later, almost verbatim, in the leaked motion. Chilling, isn't it? How something said in jest becomes political doctrine. So here's a question for you. Was this spontaneous outrage? Or had this been building under the surface for months? Because some believe this wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment escalation. Some believe that dinner was orchestrated. Let's talk motive. What if this wasn't just about punishing Harry? What if this was about forcing King Charles's hand? Because legally, Charles still has the power to remove titles. And yet, he's refused to use it. Every time Harry provoked, Charles hesitated. Every time Meghan went viral, the palace bit its tongue. Every time the monarchy was dragged into the American spotlight, the king's aides would mutter, "We shall not respond." But patience wears thin, especially in Parliament. And to some lords, Charles's silence looks like weakness. So they acted. That dinner, that motion, it might have been a test, a way to provoke Charles, or to corner him. Because once the House of Lords gets involved, it's no longer a family matter. It's a constitutional one. And when that happens, things move fast. Too fast. And Harry? He was still oblivious. While all of this was unfolding in Westminster, Harry and Meghan were reportedly finalizing production notes on a new documentary. Staffers described him as in good spirits. He was laughing, smiling, talking about launching a new initiative for mental health and veterans. Until he got the call. No, not that call. Not the one from Charles. Not yet. We'll get to that. This was a call from a contact in London. Someone who'd overheard something in a club. Something that sent chills down Harry's spine. "Mate, they're talking about taking your titles." For real. Pause. Imagine hearing that. Not from your father. Not from your brother. But from an old friend. In a nightclub. This wasn't an official warning. This was a rumor with teeth. Harry, we're told, laughed it off at first. Another headline, he said. Let them talk. But his voice, according to that source, betrayed something else. Fear. Not because of the motion itself, but because of what it represented. He wasn't just at war with the press anymore. He was now at war with the system. And systems don't back down. Systems don't cry. Or apologize. Or forget. They wait. They outlast. And now, the system had finally begun to strike back. But Harry wasn't ready. Because the real betrayal wasn't happening on the front pages. It was happening in the backrooms of power. The question is, who would leak it first? The answer? A tabloid editor who'd been sitting on a story for weeks. And when that story broke, when the proposal was printed in full, when the headline read, Lords move to strip Duke of Sussex of royal title, Harry's world shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just whispers. It wasn't just politics. It was personal. Because the institution that raised him was now plotting to erase him. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if a royal title, once conferred in front of the world, could be dismantled in silence? No fanfare, no ceremony, just a document. Printed, sealed, circulated behind closed doors. This wasn't a story meant for the public. It wasn't even supposed to be real. And yet it was. The motion began, as most political storms do, with a carefully worded paragraph, something that looked innocent enough on the surface, but hit like a wrecking ball when you understood what it really meant. That this house considers the continued use of royal styles and titles by individuals no longer undertaking official royal duties to be incompatible with the values and integrity of the crown. Read that again. This wasn't just about Harry. It was about setting a precedent. A coded message aimed directly at Montecito, cloaked in parliamentary formality. But there was a catch. No one outside the Lords was supposed to see it, until someone decided they'd had enough of secrets. Let's rewind. After the infamous dinner, a small, unofficial group of peers began exchanging drafts. At first, it was private correspondence. No formal letterhead, no legal references, just emails with subject lines like Sussex titles, potential framework, confidential, draft language for peer review. But within a week, the language sharpened. The tone turned cold. And then came the line, the one that would trigger absolute chaos once leaked. His continued exploitation of royal status for personal and financial gain undermines public trust in the monarchy and brings disrepute to the institution. There it was. The accusation in full. Exploitation, disrepute, financial gain. And the target wasn't just Prince Harry. It was everything he and Meghan had built. Their Netflix deal, their Spotify venture, their memoirs, their interviews, their brand. All of it now being framed as a betrayal of the crown. Now here's where it gets unsettling. The peer who first introduced the draft? He had once posed proudly for a photo with Harry at a veterans event, had even toasted the Invictus Games, had publicly praised the prince's valor and vision. So why turn now? Sources say it wasn't personal. It was political. But let's be honest, when you go after someone's name, it's always personal. And this wasn't just any name. It was His Royal Highness Prince Henry Charles Albert David Duke of Sussex. A name linked to centuries of royal lineage. A name Harry was born into. But as the Lord saw it, a name he no longer deserved. Still, there was one massive obstacle in the way. The public didn't know any of this was happening. And that, for the architects of the motion, was the plan. Keep it internal. Let it simmer. Wait for the perfect moment to act. But secrets don't stay buried for long in Westminster, especially when ambition and vendetta start to mingle. According to a former political aide, the draft motion was quietly shared with a small group of sympathetic journalists, off the record, of course, just in case public appetite needed to be tested. Classic strategy. Leak a whiff of scandal. Watch the outrage. If there's blowback, blame the media. If there's support, push forward. But something unexpected happened. The document didn't just leak. It exploded. One editor, who had reportedly held a grudge since the Sussexes' legal battle with the Mail on Sunday, decided to publish the draft motion in full. No redactions, no diplomacy, just raw, unfiltered parliamentary language. The headline? Peers prepare to strip Prince Harry of royal titles in historic move. The fallout was immediate. Social media went into meltdown. Hashtag #NotMyDuke began trending. So did hashtag HandsOffHarry. Royal loyalists erupted in praise. Finally, some accountability. Sussex supporters screamed foul. He fought for his country. He deserves better. The palace? Still silent. And that silence was deafening. Because now the world was watching, and Charles had a decision to make. But while the public raged, Harry was reportedly blindsided. According to insiders, he found out not from an official channel, but from a frantic phone call from one of Meghan's team. She was shaking, a Montecito staffer claimed. She kept repeating, "This isn't real. This can't be real." But it was. The proposal was real. The leak was real. And the media frenzy? That was just getting started. But here's the part almost no one saw coming. Buried within the proposal, between the formal clauses and parliamentary jargon, was a footnote. A small reference to an obscure 1917 royal letters patent issued by King George V. That footnote changed everything. Let me explain. In 1917, King George V redefined who was entitled to royal titles during wartime. He restricted HRH designations to immediate royal family members as a way to reduce the monarchy's size and cost. Now, more than a century later, the Lords were invoking that same principle to argue that modern royals who abdicate public duty should automatically forfeit their styles and titles. In short, if you're not serving the crown, you're not of the crown. It was genius, ruthless, legal dynamite. Because suddenly, the motion wasn't just symbolic. It was historical. It had teeth. It had precedent. And if passed, even in a non-binding form, it would pile enormous pressure on King Charles to act. Now, let's pause for a second. Do you feel the shift? This isn't about revenge anymore. This is about rewriting the rulebook for royal behavior. And Harry? He's become the test case, the symbol, the battleground. But the question is, why now? After years of scandals, interviews, and explosive memoirs, why is the House of Lords suddenly acting? 2 words: close personal friends. Remember that? The upcoming film Meghan and Harry are tied to, being produced under the banner of Amazon MGM Studios. Sources claim members of Parliament were shown excerpts of the script or promotional materials that allegedly cast the monarchy in an unflattering light. One line in particular reportedly set teeth on edge: a fictionalized royal figure depicted as cold, manipulative, and emotionally withholding. Sound familiar? To many, it was a thinly veiled jab at Charles, or even William. And if true, then Harry's Hollywood empire wasn't just about healing and storytelling. It was political warfare, fought on screen. And that, for many in Westminster, crossed a line. Because if you want to live like a celebrity, fine. But don't do it under the royal banner. Don't sell your version of truth with the crown still hanging over your name. So the motion gained speed. Fast. By the end of the week, 27 peers had signed a letter supporting its debate. For publicly endorsed it in the press. One went so far as to say, the monarchy is not a brand to be licensed. It is an institution that must protect its dignity. And behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Charles won't act. We will. William knows. He approves. And then came the real shocker. A source close to Prince William reportedly confirmed that he had seen the motion and did not object. That leak alone detonated across headlines. Because silence can be strategic. But quiet approval? That's something else entirely. And while Harry stewed in Montecito, furious and blindsided, the establishment in London was closing in. The proposal, once an internal document, was now a national debate. TV panels lit up. Old guard aristocrats made media rounds. Even former palace aides began chiming in. He's done nothing to deserve the title, one muttered on morning radio. He still served in Afghanistan, another shot back. And the public? Split. Outraged. Fascinated. But Harry? Harry wasn't focused on the headlines. He was focused on one thing. The man who started it all. Because behind that proposal was a name he recognized. A face from the past. A lord with connections to his mother, to Diana, to the Spencer side. And that discovery would lead Harry down a path he never expected. A path that would bring up pain, betrayal, and an old wound that never fully healed. Because this wasn't just a political hit job. It was personal. And what Harry did next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What happens when a secret slips into the wrong hands, and the world finds out before the people it affects? Because that's exactly what happened to Prince Harry. Not through a palisade. Not through his father. Not even through back-channel diplomatic whispers. Harry found out that Parliament was preparing to strip him of his titles the same way the rest of us did, through a headline. And not just any headline, but a bold, front-page splash that screamed in 72-point font. House of Lords in shock moved to strip Harry's titles. Let that sink in. Imagine waking up, coffee in hand, a child's voice in the background, the California sun shining through expensive glass. And suddenly, your name is gone. Your title, your dignity, your heritage, not removed by decree, not announced in a letter, but leaked, weaponized, broadcast for clicks, outrage, and chaos. And the worst part? It was real. The document, originally intended for limited parliamentary review, had somehow made its way into the hands of one of Britain's most notorious media sharks. A tabloid editor with a score to settle. A man who had once been publicly humiliated during the Sussex's lawsuits. A man who had promised, over drinks with an insider, that one day, they'll come crawling back. But instead of crawling, Harry now found himself cornered. Here's how it happened. A junior political staffer, young, ambitious, slightly careless, was asked to prepare briefing packets on the proposal. Nothing unusual, but in a rush to meet a deadline, he saved the document to a shared drive. A drive monitored, occasionally, by journalists fishing for leaks. A copy was downloaded, encrypted, and then, over lunch, quietly offered to a tabloid editor in exchange for a future favor. That's the trade. Access for protection, relevance for reach. It took less than 24 hours for the story to be live. No warning. No official statement. No context. Just fire. But what the public didn't see, what unfolded behind palace walls, was even more dramatic. Harry was furious. According to Montecito insiders, he stormed out of a production meeting, phone in hand, shouting, "Is this a joke?" He reportedly called his lawyer within minutes. Then his press team. Then his father. No answer. That silence. It wasn't just painful, it was damning. And it set something dark in motion. Now let's talk about the leak itself. Because the language of the document, once seen in full, wasn't just formal or legalistic. It was strategic and chillingly clear. Clause 7b read, "Should an individual born into royal status pursue a path that consistently undermines the dignity, unity, or political neutrality of the crown, his or her retention of noble styles or titles may no longer be deemed compatible with the interests of the nation." Dignity, unity, neutrality. 3 words that Harry had been accused of violating since the day of the Oprah interview. 3 words his critics wielded like swords. But here's the twist. The leak was so complete, so calculated, that it didn't just expose the document. It exposed the players behind it. Attached to the leaked file were track changes, names, suggestions, comments from at least 3 sitting lords. And one name stood out, Lord Daventry. To most, just another aristocrat. But to Harry, a ghost from the past. Because Lord Daventry wasn't just a peer of the realm. He had once been a quiet friend of Diana, not a close confidant, but a familiar face at events. A respectful ally. Someone Diana had trusted, mildly. So why now? Why would he of all people be the one to spearhead a motion that could erase Diana's son from the royal record? That's what made it sting. Some sources claim it wasn't personal. Others insist it was deeply personal. That Daventry had disapproved of Harry's emotional weaponization of his mother's story. That he saw Harry's Hollywood deals as a desecration of Diana's legacy. That he believed Diana would have never supported this path. But can we trust that? Or is it just convenient outrage? Let me ask you, who gets to own Diana's memory? Her son, or the men who once shared champagne in her name? It's a brutal question, but one that now lives at the heart of this political drama. And Harry? He wasn't taking it lightly. Behind closed doors, insiders say he began drafting a private letter to Charles. A plea, not just for support, but for intervention. Because now, the fire wasn't just on social media. It was in Parliament. Talk shows debated it. Editorials clashed. Some praised the Lords for taking action where the monarchy failed. Others warned of constitutional chaos. Are we really about to set a precedent where Parliament dictates royal identity? One commentator asked. It's not just Harry's title at stake. It's the entire structure of royal succession. But amidst the noise, 2 things happened almost simultaneously. First, Meghan's silence. For days after the leak, she said nothing. No press release. No Instagram statement. Not even a cryptic quote. According to insiders, she urged Harry to wait it out. To not play into their hands. But Harry wasn't built like that. Not anymore. The second thing? A second leak. This time, not a document, but a quote. From a source inside the House of Lords. An off-the-record remark, picked up by a BBC journalist and tweeted in less than 180 characters. If he continues to trade on royal status while attacking the crown, we will act. It was a threat, and it didn't go unnoticed. Harry reportedly exploded. The Montecito team began circulating a legal memo to select UK and US outlets, reminding them that Harry was still the son of the king, a decorated veteran, and a recognized duke under English law. But it wasn't enough, because by now, the damage was done. The leak had transformed a quiet motion into a national crisis, and there was no going back. But what came next? No one saw that coming, because while Harry scrambled, while the palace stayed quiet, while Daventry doubled down, someone else stepped forward, someone who had been silent for years, someone who remembered a very different Diana, and what they revealed would turn everything on its head and force Harry to confront a truth he wasn't ready to hear. What if the man trying to erase your royal identity once praised your mother as the greatest woman of her generation? What if he smiled in your face at charity galas, while quietly preparing to strip you of everything she left behind? Because that's exactly who Lord Daventry is. On paper, he's a lifelong aristocrat, a pillar of British tradition, a polished figure who blends seamlessly into the fabric of the upper chamber. He's spoken sparingly in the Lords, preferring brief, sharp interventions, rarely emotional, always controlled. But behind the public image lurks something colder, calculated, possibly even personal. Let's unpack that. Lord Cedric Daventry, 78 years old, Oxford-educated, former diplomat, former advisor to the Foreign Office, patron of 3 royal charities, and known in elite circles as a man who never forgets a slight. He is not just a peer. He is the architect of the motion to strip Prince Harry of his royal titles. And until now, no one fully understood why. Sure, he represents a traditionalist wing of the Lords. Sure, he's been critical of the Sussexes since the Megxit announcement. But this move, this full-throated, cold-blooded attack on Harry's legal identity, it felt disproportionate. Until someone leaked his real history. Let's go back 2 decades. In the mid-90s, Lord Daventry, then Sir Cedric, was a junior Foreign Office liaison assigned to a task force on charitable diplomacy. One of their early high-profile engagements? Coordinating joint initiatives with Diana, Princess of Wales. He was never in her inner circle, but he was there, planning, observing, and, according to one former staffer, smitten. She captivated him, they said. He used to speak about her with reverence, but also with this strange resentment, like she made him feel irrelevant. Over the years, that admiration soured, especially after Diana's separation from Charles. Daventry, sources say, was staunchly anti-divorce. He viewed the breakdown of the marriage as a national embarrassment, and Diana's continued global stardom, especially post-1996, reportedly made him furious. She undermined the crown, he allegedly said in a private letter. She personalized it, commercialized it, turned it into theater. Sound familiar? Because now, those exact words are being used to describe her son. The parallels are impossible to ignore. And the bitterness? It didn't fade with Diana's death. It metastasized. When Harry married Meghan, Daventry reportedly made a snide comment to a colleague. Let's hope he doesn't repeat the Diana mistake, confusing celebrity with service. But when the Oprah interview aired, something snapped. In closed-door Lords discussions, Daventry was described as volcanic. He accused Harry of trading on trauma, of airing family grievances like a soap opera, and of devaluing the monarchy by monetizing royal pain. Still, he didn't act. Not yet. So what changed? Sources now point to 2 things. First, the announcement of close personal friends, the Hollywood project rumored to fictionalize royal events under a thin veil. Second, a private lunch in January 2025, where Daventry reportedly saw a leaked scene description. The scene? A portrayal of an older male royal advisor dismissing a vulnerable young prince. The prince begs for support. The advisor warns him to know his place. The implication? The establishment failed him. The institution broke him. And for Daventry? That was it. He reportedly slammed his fork down and said, "He's portraying us as villains. I won't be part of a monarchy that lets this continue." From that moment, the proposal was no longer abstract. It became a mission. Now here's where it gets even darker. According to one parliamentary insider, Daventry wasn't acting alone. A small but influential bloc of peers, older, fiercely loyal to the Queen's legacy, increasingly wary of Charles's softer leadership style, had been waiting for someone to lead the charge. Daventry gave them permission and cover, and more importantly, he brought institutional memory. He remembered the 1936 abdication crisis. He remembered the scandal of the Duke of Windsor's Nazi sympathies. He remembered how titles could become weapons in the wrong hands. To Daventry, Harry's California lifestyle wasn't modern. It was dangerous. And the Netflix deals? The podcast revelations? The memoir? All evidence. Evidence that the royal brand was being sold to the highest bidder. But here's the contradiction that makes this entire chapter so explosive. Daventry himself once advised royal initiatives that used media for diplomacy. He praised Diana's televised landmine appeal. He attended charity galas with Elton John. He even supported a BBC documentary on Charles's environmental work. So why now, when Harry uses media, does it become betrayal? Ask yourself, is this really about duty to the crown? Or is it about generational revenge? About punishing a son for daring to echo his mother's defiance? Because beneath all of Daventry's parliamentary decorum lies a festering wound, the legacy of Diana, and a belief that she broke the rules and got away with it. Now Harry's breaking them, too. And this time, someone intends to make him pay. But don't be fooled. This isn't just an ideological crusade. It's also about power. By rallying support for the motion, Daventry is repositioning himself as a gatekeeper of royal legitimacy. He knows Charles won't act. He knows William won't intervene. So who fills the vacuum? He does, with velvet gloves and an iron grip. Now let's talk about strategy. Daventry's draft motion wasn't just about removing titles. It was designed to put pressure on Buckingham Palace to act before Parliament did, to force Charles to choose loyalty to his son or loyalty to the institution. Because if the House of Lords votes and the palace stays silent, that silence becomes a statement, a consent, even a betrayal. And Daventry knows exactly how dangerous that will be for Harry and for Charles. It's a lose-lose scenario. But that's the point. It's chess, not checkers. And right now, Daventry is 2 moves ahead. But Harry? He's not out of moves yet. Because someone who worked with Daventry in the 90s, a former assistant, long retired, and deeply loyal to Diana, has come forward. With letters, correspondence between Diana and Daventry's office. Letters that reveal a far more complicated relationship than Daventry once remembered. One letter reportedly includes Diana thanking Daventry for a moment of kindness. Another, more revealing, allegedly expresses concern about how certain lords see royal women as commodities. If that letter is real and it's released, it could obliterate Daventry's moral high ground. And Harry knows it. According to Montecito insiders, Harry has been briefed. He knows the letters exist, and he's preparing to go public with what Diana really thought about the men now leading the charge against him. Because this isn't just about his title. It's about her legacy. And if Lord Daventry thinks he can erase that with emotion and a speech, he's about to discover that Harry has his mother's fire. And what happens next might just burn the whole system to the ground. What if the one person who could defuse this crisis has been gone for nearly 3 decades? What if the most powerful voice in the debate over Harry's future isn't Charles or William or the House of Lords, but Diana? That question has haunted this entire ordeal like a ghost in the room. Every time Harry speaks about being silenced, about needing to break free, about doing things differently, he invokes her. Every time Meghan is criticized, comparisons are made. Every time the palace is accused of coldness, detachment, or cruelty, people remember that interview. Panorama, 1995. There were 3 of us in this marriage. You know the one. And now, as Harry faces the most public institutional rejection of his life, the same question is being whispered everywhere. What would Diana say? Would she defend him? Would she beg him to come home? Would she tell him to stop? Or would she join him? Let's dig into it. Because the truth? It's complicated. Diana Spencer wasn't just a mother. She was an icon, a symbol, a paradox. She loved tradition and rebelled against it. She craved privacy and courted the cameras. She was, as her biographers often note, a woman at war with herself. Sound familiar? Because those contradictions, they live in Harry now. He inherited her charisma, her pain, and her defiance, but also her need to control the narrative, to shape her image before someone else could distort it. And now, as he faces the looming threat of losing his titles tied directly to the family she once married into, he's using her memory as both armor and weapon. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say aloud. Not everyone agrees on what Diana would have done. Some believe she'd be appalled by Harry's tell-alls, his interviews, his public bashing of the monarchy. Others argue she'd applaud his honesty, his fight for autonomy, his refusal to be silenced. And in the middle of this battle, Diana is being pulled in both directions like a ghostly rope in a tug-of-war. Let's break down how both sides are using her legacy. The House of Lords version of Diana. According to Daventry and his supporters, Diana was a tragic figure. a victim of royal rigidity, but still a loyal servant to the people. They see her charity work, her landmine campaigns, her compassion for AIDS victims. They see a woman who suffered in silence, who never formally severed her royal ties. They point out that even after her divorce, she didn't renounce her role as a public figure. She didn't write a memoir. She didn't monetize her trauma. In fact, she reportedly turned down several offers to do exactly that. So from this perspective, Diana is a symbol of dignity, of service without scandal. And Harry, in contrast, is seen as having crossed a line she never dared to. They argue that if Diana had lived, she would have guided him back toward the crown, not pushed him away from it, that she would have never let it come to this. The Sussex version of Diana. But then there's Harry's Diana, the one he speaks of in interviews, the one who cried alone in palace rooms, the one who was gaslit, discarded, and betrayed, the one who did speak out. First through Andrew Morton, then on national television, the one who told the world, "I want to be the queen of people's hearts." Harry sees himself not as tarnishing her memory, but completing her arc. Where she was silenced, he speaks. Where she was punished for independence, he monetizes it. Where she died in a car fleeing paparazzi, he turns the cameras on himself, on his terms. To him, that's not betrayal. That's liberation. And Meghan? She's not the problem. She's the redemption. The partner his mother never had. The one who protects, shields, and defends. And so when Meghan is attacked, it's not just about her. It's about Diana. It's generational trauma. It's history repeating. And that's why, in Harry's mind, this motion to strip his titles isn't just politics. It's revenge against both of them. A final punishment for Diana that her son now carries. But here's where things take a turn. Because in the middle of this public argument over Diana's legacy, a private piece of her voice emerged. A letter. One Harry had seen before, but one he'd never intended to use. Until now. Let me explain. In the late 90s, Diana reportedly wrote a series of private letters to close friends and confidants, expressing fears about the institution, concerns about her sons, and hopes for their futures. Some of those letters were donated to archives. Others were sold. A few were kept quiet by loyal staffers. And one was preserved by a former housekeeper who has since passed away. That letter, recently uncovered, includes a line that has stunned everyone who's seen it. "I worry Harry will be like me. Misunderstood. Loved publicly. Attacked privately. He feels things too deeply." Another line. "I hope, if I cannot guide him, that he will find someone who loves him enough to protect him from the system." And finally, "If he ever feels lost, I want him to remember, he is more than a title." That last sentence, it shook Harry to the core. Because in the face of a political system trying to erase his identity, his mother, long gone, had unknowingly already answered the question. He is more than a title. But what does that mean? Does it mean he should walk away from the royal name? Or fight for it even harder? Sources say that letter is now being considered for release. A possible PR move. A public rebuttal to Daventry and the Lords. A way to frame the issue not as disrespect for the monarchy, but as loyalty to his mother's final wishes. But is it enough? Will a letter from 1997 really change the tide of public opinion? Or will it deepen the divide? Let's ask the real question. Can Diana's memory still protect Harry? Or is invoking her now too late? Too political? Too self-serving? Because critics have started to push back. One tabloid ran a headline. "Stop hiding behind Mum. You're a grown man, Harry." Harsh. Yes. But it struck a nerve. Because even some sympathizers are wondering, when does remembrance become manipulation? When does legacy become marketing? It's a tightrope Harry is walking, and it's only getting thinner. Because here's what no one expected. Daventry, when confronted about the letter, reportedly scoffed. "It's touching," he said, "but titles are not about feelings." That line hit Harry like a punch. Because to him, everything is about feelings. That's what Diana taught him. That's what he built his brand on. That's what he thought the new monarchy could be. But now, it's clear. The old guard is drawing a line, and it runs straight through Diana's legacy. On one side, duty, control, protocol. On the other, emotion, healing, disruption. And Harry? He's standing right in the middle, trying to honor the past while rewriting it. But the question remains, can he win? Can he protect his name, his family, and his mother's story? Or is this motion already too far gone? Because what comes next could break more than just tradition. It could fracture the monarchy forever, and the next player to enter the stage would make it even more complicated. Because this time, it wasn't Charles. It wasn't William. It was someone Harry thought would never stay silent again. And what they revealed would make even Diana's letter look tame. What stings more, the betrayal of a nation or the silence of your brother? Because while the House of Lords drafted motions and newspapers screamed headlines, William said nothing. Not a statement, not a quote, not even a whisper through his usually well-oiled press machine. And that silence? It wasn't neutral. It was loud. It was deafening. And to Harry, it was personal. Because there's one truth that keeps crashing like a wave beneath this royal crisis. Harry might be at war with the monarchy, but William is the monarchy now. And if William had wanted to shut this motion down, he could have. A private word with a peer, a hint to the palace press office, a nudge to Clarence House. But instead, there was nothing. And Harry noticed. Let's be clear. This chapter isn't about brothers as children. We're not back in Balmoral. This isn't 1997, two boys walking behind a coffin. This is now. Two adult men. Two fathers. Two global figures. One still cloaked in duty. The other, stripped bare in the California sun. So why didn't William speak? Was it indifference? Agreement? Or something deeper? Let's trace it. In the days after the proposal leaked, insiders say Harry attempted to contact William. Not through formal channels. Not through aides. But directly. A message, reportedly simple. We need to talk. This isn't just politics anymore. No response. Another message. Longer. Angrier. Still nothing. Then came the leak. A journalist from a royal-friendly paper published a short but explosive line. Kensington Palace sources say the Prince of Wales will not be intervening in parliamentary discussions regarding his brother's titles. Let that sink in. Not only would William remain silent, he chose silence. He allowed it to be known. That decision changed everything. Because up until that moment, Harry believed there was still a sliver of protection, that no matter how strained their relationship, William wouldn't let Parliament erase him. Not entirely. Not like this. But now, that hope was gone. And in its place, a new emotion. Not just betrayal. Resentment. Let's go back. In the months following the Queen's death, Harry and William had brief, tense meetings. According to sources, one of the key points of friction, Harry's title. William allegedly believed that if Harry had walked away from royal duty, he should have also walked away from the trappings. The Duke of Sussex. The royal coat of arms. The ceremonial styling in business ventures. Harry disagreed. He reportedly said, "I was born into this. I didn't rent it." That line, "I didn't rent it," would later resurface in a heated private exchange after King Charles's coronation. A moment many believed would reunite the brothers. Instead, it widened the gulf. William's stance. Honor means sacrifice. Harry's view? Identity isn't a uniform you can take off. They were no longer speaking the same language. And now, with the Lord's motion surfacing, William's silence was being interpreted as quiet approval, even encouragement. When asked by a trusted journalist if William was troubled by the proposal, a royal source allegedly said, "He's more concerned about the future of the monarchy than the feelings of one man who chose to leave it." Ouch. It's clinical. It's cold. It's calculated. And yet, it may also be sincere. Because William isn't just Harry's brother anymore. He's the heir. The steward of the institution. The man who must prepare for a reign that comes sooner with each passing day. And that role leaves little room for sentiment. He saw what happened with Diana. He saw what happened with Charles. He watched the Oprah interview. He read Spare. He heard exactly what Harry said about Kate. And he knows that the crown cannot survive if everyone with a grievance gets to keep the gold seal. So, he stays silent. He lets the motion live. And in doing so, he draws a line that's been years in the making. But here's where it gets twisty. Because even inside William's camp, not everyone agrees. One aide, anonymous, but long-serving, was reportedly horrified by the silence. They allegedly told a Times reporter, "This goes beyond politics. It's personal, and it will haunt both of them for decades." And what's worse, the children, William's, Harry's, cousins who barely know each other, who will grow up seeing headlines about betrayal, erasure, and silence. A future in which Archie and Charlotte are footnotes to a family feud no one had the courage to end. But maybe that's the point. Because in the modern monarchy, distance is strategy. And William? He's the master of it. No drama, no emotion, just protocol. But here's where the real twist lands. In the middle of all this silence, a private memo from Kensington Palace surfaced in an encrypted leak. Short, unconfirmed, but damning. Let Parliament act. We will not obstruct. Titles should reflect duty, not sentiment. That line destroyed Harry. Because even if Charles stayed quiet, even if the palace spun its wheels, William was now on record, even unofficially, agreeing with his erasure. And to Harry, that wasn't just political betrayal. That was fraternal abandonment. Let me ask you directly. How would you feel if your own brother allowed your name to be taken? If he let strangers decide your fate? If he sat back, folded his hands, and watched your legacy be debated like a policy issue? Because that's exactly what's happening now. And Harry's reaction? Sources say he snapped. Emotionally. Strategically. He reportedly told his team, if they think I'm letting this happen quietly, they've forgotten who I am. And that statement was the beginning of a shift. Because up until now, Harry had been reactive, responding to leaks, headlines, motions. But now, he was ready to fight back. Not with lawyers, not with press statements, but with a story only he could tell, a story about a conversation, a confrontation between two brothers behind palace doors. And what was said in that meeting, what William told him, face to face, would soon become public. And once the world heard it, the myth of the United Brothers, the fairy tale that began in Kensington Gardens, would be shattered. Because the truth is much messier than the palace ever let on. And what Harry was about to reveal would leave the monarchy scrambling to do damage control. What if the fight to strip Harry's royal titles didn't start in London, but got its biggest boost down under? Because while the House of Lords was quietly sharpening its blades halfway across the world, in the halls of Canberra and in prime time on Australian TV, another storm was brewing. A louder one, a brasher one, and it would send shockwaves through Harry's already unraveling royal identity. Let's paint the scene. It started innocently enough. An email, routine, brief, but marked urgent. It was sent to a senior official in the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, asking whether they intended to refer to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle by their full titles, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, during their upcoming unofficial tour, tied to the promotion of close personal friends. That email was leaked, and when it hit the front pages, the reaction was immediate. The headline? Do we still call him a prince? And just like that, the Australian press, and then the public, were on fire. Radio talk shows lit up. Pundits debated the question with growing fury. Why are we rolling out the red carpet for people who walked away from the job? One host bellowed. Why are we honoring them like royals when they've made millions mocking the institution? Another snapped. But it wasn't just the media. It was Parliament. A backbencher from Queensland, young, anti-monarchist, and rising fast, stood up in session and delivered a speech that stopped everyone cold. We are a sovereign nation. We are not a marketing arm for exiled aristocrats who use their titles to launch Netflix careers and memoirs. If Harry wants to be Australian royalty, let him earn it like the rest of us, on merit. That clip went viral. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed 12 million times on TikTok. And just like that, the Australian backlash wasn't just a local storm. It was global. The BBC covered it. CNN aired it. Sky News in the UK ran a segment titled, Commonwealth Cracks. Australia leads charge against Harry's royal status. And back in Montecito, Harry was stunned. Because this wasn't just political noise anymore. This was international erosion of his title, one country at a time. Now let's rewind. What if a royal title, once conferred in front of the world, could be dismantled in silence? No fanfare, no ceremony, just a document. Printed, sealed, circulated behind closed doors. This wasn't a story meant for the public. It wasn't even supposed to be real. And yet it was. The motion began, as most political storms do, with a carefully worded paragraph, something that looked innocent enough on the surface, but hit like a wrecking ball when you understood what it really meant. that this house considers the continued use of royal styles and titles by individuals no longer undertaking official royal duties to be incompatible with the values and integrity of the crown. Read that again. This wasn't just about Harry. It was about setting a precedent. A coded message aimed directly at Montecito, cloaked in parliamentary formality. But there was a catch. No one outside the Lords was supposed to see it, until someone decided they'd had enough of secrets. Let's rewind. After the infamous dinner, a small, unofficial group of peers began exchanging drafts. At first, it was private correspondence. No formal letterhead, no legal references, just emails with subject lines like Sussex titles, potential framework, confidential, draft language for peer review. But within a week, the language sharpened. The tone turned cold. And then came the line, the one that would trigger absolute chaos once leaked. His continued exploitation of royal status for personal and financial gain undermines public trust in the monarchy and brings disrepute to the institution. There it was. The accusation in full. Exploitation, disrepute, financial gain. And the target wasn't just Prince Harry. It was everything he and Meghan had built. Their Netflix deal, their Spotify venture, their memoirs, their interviews, their brand. All of it now being framed as a betrayal of the crown. Now here's where it gets unsettling. The peer who first introduced the draft? He had once posed proudly for a photo with Harry at a veterans event, had even toasted the Invictus Games, had publicly praised the prince's valor and vision. So why turn now? Sources say it wasn't personal. It was political. But let's be honest, when you go after someone's name, it's always personal. And this wasn't just any name. It was His Royal Highness Prince Henry Charles Albert David Duke of Sussex. A name linked to centuries of royal lineage. A name Harry was born into. But as the Lord saw it, a name he no longer deserved. Still, there was one massive obstacle in the way. The public didn't know any of this was happening. And that, for the architects of the motion, was the plan. Keep it internal. Let it simmer. Wait for the perfect moment to act. But secrets don't stay buried for long in Westminster, especially when ambition and vendetta start to mingle. According to a former political aide, the draft motion was quietly shared with a small group of sympathetic journalists, off the record, of course, just in case public appetite needed to be tested. Classic strategy. Leak a whiff of scandal. Watch the outrage. If there's blowback, blame the media. If there's support, push forward. But something unexpected happened. The document didn't just leak. It exploded. One editor, who had reportedly held a grudge since the Sussexes' legal battle with the Mail on Sunday, decided to publish the draft motion in full. No redactions. No diplomacy. Just raw, unfiltered parliamentary language. The headline? Peers prepare to strip Prince Harry of royal titles in historic move. The fallout was immediate. Social media went into meltdown. Hashtag #NotMyDuke began trending. So did hashtag #HandsOffHarry. Royal loyalists erupted in praise. Finally, some accountability. Sussex supporters screamed foul. He fought for his country. He deserves better. The palace? Still silent. And that silence was deafening. Because now the world was watching, and Charles had a decision to make. But while the public raged, Harry was reportedly blindsided. According to insiders, he found out not from an official channel, but from a frantic phone call from one of Meghan's team. She was shaking, a Montecito staffer claimed. She kept repeating, "This isn't real. This can't be real." But it was. The proposal was real. The leak was real. And the media frenzy? That was just getting started. But here's the part almost no one saw coming. Buried within the proposal, between the formal clauses and parliamentary jargon, was a footnote. A small reference to an obscure 1917 royal letters patent issued by King George V. That footnote changed everything. Let me explain. In 1917, King George V redefined who was entitled to royal titles during wartime. He restricted HRH designations to immediate royal family members as a way to reduce the monarchy's size and cost. Now, more than a century later, the Lords were invoking that same principle to argue that modern royals who abdicate public duty should automatically forfeit their styles and titles. In short, if you're not serving the crown, you're not of the crown. It was genius, ruthless, legal dynamite. Because suddenly, the motion wasn't just symbolic. It was historical. It had teeth. It had precedent, and if passed, even in a non-binding form, it would pile enormous pressure on King Charles to act. Now, let's pause for a second. Do you feel the shift? This isn't about revenge anymore. This is about rewriting the rulebook for royal behavior. And Harry? He's become the test case, the symbol, the battleground. But the question is, why now? After years of scandals, interviews, and explosive memoirs, why is the House of Lords suddenly acting? 2 words: close personal friends. Remember that? The upcoming film Meghan and Harry are tied to, being produced under the banner of Amazon MGM Studios. Sources claim members of Parliament were shown excerpts of the script or promotional materials that allegedly cast the monarchy in an unflattering light. One line in particular